What do you do when you discover your mother-in-law has been sabotaging your marriage from day one, secretly meeting with your husband's ex, and legally stealing your home? When I found those court documents, everything made sense. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from the moment I thought I was the luckiest woman alive, before I realized I'd walked straight into a carefully constructed trap. Before I dive deeper into the story, if you're enjoying it so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could hit that like button, leave a comment letting me know where you're watching from, and subscribe to the channel with notifications on. Your support means the world to me and helps me keep bringing you these stories. My name is Harper. Harper Caldwell. Well, it was Harper Sinclair before I married into what I thought was the perfect family. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a pediatric occupational therapist at Children's Healthcare in downtown Portland, Oregon. I've always loved my job, helping kids overcome developmental challenges, watching them achieve milestones their parents thought might never come. There's something profoundly satisfying about being part of someone's healing journey, about making a real difference in a child's life. I met my husband, Ethan Caldwell, years ago at a charity fundraiser for the hospital. He was there representing his family's real estate investment firm, Caldwell Properties. The moment I saw him across the room, something shifted inside me. He had this warm, genuine smile and these deep green eyes that seemed to look right into your soul. We talked for 3 hours straight that night, sitting at a corner table long after the event had ended, the catering staff politely working around us as we discovered we both loved hiking in the Columbia River Gorge, that we'd both read the entire works of John Steinbeck, and that we both believed pineapple absolutely did not belong on pizza. Our courtship was like something out of a romantic movie. Ethan would leave little notes in my car, surprise me with coffee at work, take me on spontaneous weekend trips to the coast. He was attentive, thoughtful, and seemed genuinely interested in everything about me. My friends were envious. My coworkers would sigh dreamily when I'd tell them about our latest adventure. Even my skeptical father, who never thought any man was good enough for his daughter, admitted that Ethan seemed like a decent guy. We dated for 18 months before Ethan proposed. It happened on top of Angel's Rest, a hiking trail we'd climbed together on our third date. The sun was setting over the gorge, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and he got down on one knee right there on the rocky summit. The ring was perfect, a vintage emerald-cut diamond that had belonged to his grandmother. I said yes before he even finished asking the question. That's when I first met Vivian Caldwell, my future mother-in-law. Ethan had mentioned his mother before, of course. He described her as strong, independent, a woman who'd built the family business from nothing after his father passed away when Ethan was just 15. He spoke about her with a mixture of admiration and something I couldn't quite identify at the time. Looking back now, I realize it was fear, carefully disguised as respect. The first meeting was at Vivian's home, a sprawling estate in the West Hills with manicured gardens and a view of Mount Hood on clear days. The house was immaculate, decorated in whites and creams, everything in its precise place. I felt like I should remove my shoes at the door, though no one asked me to. Vivian herself was elegant in a cold, untouchable way. She was in her late 50s but looked younger, with perfectly highlighted blonde hair swept into a flawless chignon, designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and a smile that never quite reached her ice blue eyes. She looked me up and down when Ethan introduced us, and I felt like a specimen under a microscope. "So you're the one who's captured my son's heart," she said, her voice smooth as silk and just as cold. How charming. The way she said charming made it sound like an insult. Throughout that first dinner, Vivian asked me questions that seemed friendly on the surface, but had sharp edges underneath. Where did I grow up? Oh, the east side of Portland. How interesting. And my parents, what did they do? My father was a high school chemistry teacher, and my mother worked as a dental hygienist. I see, Vivian had said, her lips pursing slightly. And what exactly did I do at the hospital? When I explained my work with children, she nodded slowly. How fulfilling that must be, working with other people's children. The comment stung, though I couldn't articulate why at the time. Ethan, to his credit, tried to steer the conversation to neutral topics, but Vivian always found a way to circle back, probing, assessing, measuring me against some invisible standard I clearly wasn't meeting. When we left that night, I felt exhausted, like I'd just taken a grueling exam I wasn't sure I'd passed. "She's just protective," Ethan said in the car, reaching over to squeeze my hand. "She'll warm up to you. She just needs time." I believed him. I wanted to believe him. The wedding planning began, and that's when things started to get complicated. Vivian insisted on being involved in every decision, not in the way of a helpful future mother-in-law, offering suggestions and support, but in a controlling, dominating way that slowly pushed me to the margins of my own wedding. She didn't like my choice of venue. "Too casual," she said. She suggested the country club, where she was a member instead. It was beautiful, admittedly, but it wasn't us. It was stuffy and formal, and the deposit alone was more than I'd planned to spend on the entire wedding. Ethan convinced me to go along with it. "It would make her happy," he said. "And it is beautiful, Harper. Think about the photos." Then came the guest list. I wanted something intimate, maybe 75 people. Vivian had other ideas. She needed to invite business associates, family friends, people from the club. The list ballooned to 250 guests, most of whom I'd never met and never would again. The dress was another battle. I'd found one I loved at a boutique in the Pearl District, a simple A-line gown with delicate lace sleeves. When I showed Vivian the photo, she wrinkled her nose. "Darling, you need something with more presence," she said. "Something that makes a statement. Let me take you to where I bought my wedding dress." We ended up at an exclusive salon where the cheapest dress cost $5,000. Vivian loved a heavily beaded ball gown that made me feel like I was playing dress up in someone else's fantasy. When I hesitated, she sighed dramatically. "Ethan, tell your fiancé she looks absolutely stunning," she commanded. And Ethan, standing there with his hands in his pockets, had nodded. "You do look beautiful, Harper. Maybe give it a chance." I bought the dress. I hated it, but I bought it. Looking back, I can see the pattern forming even then. Every decision, every choice, Vivian inserted herself, and Ethan never stood up to her. He'd cajole and convince me instead, always framing it as keeping the peace, as making his mother happy, as choosing battles wisely. The wedding itself was beautiful in a sterile, magazine-perfect way. Everything was white and gold and crystal. The flowers were stunning, but not ones I'd chosen. The menu was exquisite, but not what I'd wanted. Even the music was Vivian's selections. I felt like a guest at my own wedding, smiling for photos in a dress I didn't love, surrounded by people I didn't know, celebrating a day that had been carefully orchestrated by someone else. But there was one bright spot, one decision Vivian couldn't control, though not for lack of trying. The house. 6 months before the wedding, my mother's aunt, my great-aunt Rosemary, passed away. She'd never married, never had children, and she left her house to me in her will. It was a beautiful craftsman bungalow in the Laurelhouse neighborhood, built in 1922, with original hardwood floors, a stone fireplace, built-in bookshelves, and a garden full of roses that Aunt Rosemary had tended for 40 years. The house was worth close to $800,000 in Portland's insane real estate market, but more than that, it was filled with memories. Summer afternoons on the front porch, helping Aunt Rosemary water her roses, listening to her stories about Portland in the old days. She'd been a librarian at the Central Library for 35 years, and she'd filled that house with books and love and the smell of vanilla because she always had something baking. When I inherited it, I cried for days. Not just from grief, though I missed her terribly, but from the overwhelming gratitude that she'd thought of me, that she'd given me this incredible gift. Ethan was thrilled. We'd been talking about saving for a down payment on a condo, scraping together every spare dollar, facing the reality that in Portland's market, we'd be lucky to afford a one-bedroom in the suburbs. Now we had a house, a real house with character and history, in one of the best neighborhoods in the city. Vivian's reaction was different. "You'll sell it, of course," she said when we told her about the inheritance. It wasn't a question, it was a statement. That neighborhood is all old families and trust fund babies. The property taxes alone will bury you, and the upkeep on those old houses is endless. You'll sell it and invest the money properly. "Actually, we're planning to live there," I said, finding my voice for once. It was my aunt's home. It means a lot to me. Vivian's eyes went cold. Sentiment is expensive, Harper. You need to be practical. We can afford it, Ethan interjected. Harper's inheritance includes a trust that covers the taxes, and I make good money. We'll be fine. You make good money working for the family business, Vivian said sharply. A business I still control, in case you've forgotten. The implication hung in the air like poison gas. But we kept the house. It was one of the few times Ethan stood firm against his mother, though I noticed he was quieter than usual for days afterward, and he made extra trips to the office to work on projects Vivian suddenly needed completed urgently. We moved in 2 weeks after the wedding. Those first months were the happiest of my marriage. We painted the walls soft colors that Aunt Rosemary would have loved. We refinished the hardwood floors ourselves, working side by side on weekends, laughing when we got more stain on ourselves than the wood. We planted new roses in the garden and hung our wedding photos, the few that I actually liked, in the hallway. For a while, I thought we'd made it. I thought we'd built our own life, separate from Vivian's control. I was so naive. The first sign that something was wrong came about 4 months after we moved in. I came home from work one Tuesday afternoon to find Vivian in my kitchen. She had a key. Ethan had given her a key without telling me. Harper, darling, she said, looking up from the real estate magazines spread across my kitchen table. I hope you don't mind. Ethan said I could let myself in. I was just in the neighborhood. Vivian was never just in the neighborhood. She lived in the West Hills, a 20-minute drive away. She had no reason to be in Laurelhurst on a random Tuesday afternoon. I was thinking about what you could do with this place, she continued, gesturing around the kitchen. These old houses have such potential, but they need work. The kitchen is terribly dated. You really should consider a renovation. I know an excellent contractor. We like the kitchen, I said, trying to keep my voice level. It has the original cabinets and tile. That's part of the house's charm. Charm doesn't sell, dear. Investment value does. We're not selling. Vivian smiled that cold smile. Of course not. Not yet. But it's always wise to keep your options open. She left soon after, but the magazine stayed on my kitchen table, open to articles about modernizing vintage homes, maximizing resale value, strategic renovations. I threw them in the recycling bin, but the violation remained. She'd been in my house, uninvited, going through my things, making plans for my home. When I confronted Ethan about the key that night, he sighed. She's my mother, Harper. She might need to get in if there's an emergency. What kind of emergency requires your mother to have access to our house when we're not here? I don't know. What if there's a pipe burst or a break-in and the security company needs someone to meet them? They can call us. They can call a locksmith. They don't need your mother. We argued about it for the first time since we'd gotten married. Really argued, voices raised, words that cut. In the end, Ethan refused to ask for the key back, and I didn't have the energy to keep fighting. I told myself it didn't matter, that Vivian wouldn't actually use it, that I was overreacting. She used it 3 more times in the next 2 months. Always when I wasn't home. Always leaving some small sign that she'd been there. A furniture catalog on the coffee table. Business cards for estate sale companies. Once, I found a folder on my desk containing market analysis for homes in Laurelhurst, recent sales, projected values, tax implications. I started to feel like I was being haunted in my own home. Then the really strange things started happening. I'd come home to find small items moved or missing. A framed photo of my parents that usually sat on the mantel would be in a drawer. My favorite coffee mug, a hand-thrown ceramic piece Aunt Rosemary had made in a pottery class, disappeared completely. The spare key I kept in my desk for my best friend Olivia vanished. When I mentioned these things to Ethan, he looked at me like I was crazy. You probably just forgot where you put them, he said. You've been stressed at work. We all misplace things sometimes. But I didn't forget. I knew where I put things. I knew that photo always sat in the same spot, that my mug lived on the second shelf of the cabinet, that my spare key was in the left drawer of my desk. Someone was gaslighting me in my own home, and I had a pretty good idea who. I started documenting things. I'd take photos of my house before I left for work, checking them against what I found when I returned. Small things were different almost every time. A book moved from one shelf to another. My jewelry box opened when I'd left it closed. the thermostat set to a different temperature. I didn't tell Ethan about the photos. I didn't know how to explain it without sounding paranoid. And part of me, a growing part, wasn't sure I could trust him to believe me. 6 months into our marriage, Vivian invited us to a family dinner. Just the three of us, she said. A chance to catch up and discuss some business matters. I didn't want to go. Something in my gut screamed warning, but Ethan insisted. She's trying, he said. She's making an effort. The least we can do is show up. We arrived at Vivian's house at 7. She greeted us at the door in a black cocktail dress, diamond earrings sparkling. Darling, she said to Ethan, kissing both his cheeks. To me, she offered a brief nod. Harper. Dinner was catered some fusion cuisine that was more art than food. We made small talk over the first course, Vivian asking about Ethan's latest projects at work, mentioning people from the club, discussing the market trends. I might as well have been invisible. Then, over the main course, she dropped the bomb. Ethan, I've been thinking about your future at the company, she said, delicately cutting her duck breast. You've been doing excellent work, but I think it's time we discussed partnership and what that would mean for you and Harper. Ethan sat up straighter. His interest peaked. Partnership, full partnership, equal share in the business, your name on everything, a substantial increase in your compensation. She paused, taking a sip of wine. Of course, there would be some requirements. I felt my stomach clench. What kind of requirements? Ethan asked. Partners need to demonstrate financial stability and sound judgment. They need to show they can manage assets effectively. Vivian's eyes slid to me, then back to Ethan. I'd need to see that you've made smart decisions about your personal investments. That Laurel Huss property, for instance. Holding on to it out of sentiment is understandable, but it's not financially sound. A partner would sell it, invest the capital properly, and demonstrate fiscal responsibility. The room went silent except for the soft jazz playing in the background. You want us to sell our house, I said slowly. I want Ethan to make smart business decisions, Vivian corrected. The house is lovely, Harper, but it's dead equity. It's not generating income. It's not building wealth. It's just sitting there, a shrine to your aunt's memory. Touching, certainly, but not practical. It's our home, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. It's where we live. It's not an investment property. Everything is an investment, dear. And that house is a poor one. Vivian turned to Ethan, dismissing me entirely. I've had the property appraised. In this market, you could clear close to $700,000 after taxes and fees. Invested properly, that capital could generate real returns. And there are excellent condos in the Pearl District, much more suitable for a young professional couple. More practical, better amenities, and you'd have liquid assets working for you. Ethan was quiet, his jaw tight. I could see him processing, calculating, weighing his mother's words. And if we don't sell? I asked. Vivian's smile was razor-sharp. Then I'd have to question Ethan's readiness for partnership. The business requires partners who can make difficult decisions, who don't let emotions cloud their judgment. If he can't manage his own household finances effectively, how can I trust him with the company's future? It was a threat, beautifully packaged, elegantly delivered, but a threat nonetheless. We left shortly after, neither of us eating the dessert that was served. In the car, Ethan was silent, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles went white. We're not selling, I said. Tell me we're not selling. He didn't answer right away, and in that silence, something between us cracked. She has a point, he finally said. Not about selling necessarily, but about being smart with our assets. Maybe we should at least consider it. Consider it? I turned to look at him, unable to believe what I was hearing. Ethan, that house is my inheritance. It's the only thing I have from my aunt. It's our home. It's just a house, Harper. It's not just a house to me. But that's the problem, isn't it? You're too emotionally attached. You're not thinking rationally. Thinking rationally? Your mother is blackmailing you into selling my house, and you're calling me irrational? She's not blackmailing me. She's offering me a partnership, and she has valid concerns about our financial decisions. We didn't speak for the rest of the drive home. When we got inside, Ethan went straight to his study and closed the door. I stood in the living room, looking at the built-in bookshelves filled with Aunt Rosemary's books, at the fireplace where she taught me to roast marshmallows, at the worn spot on the floor where she'd sat in her reading chair for decades. I felt the walls closing in. Over the next few weeks, Ethan brought up selling the house repeatedly. Always carefully, always framed as a suggestion, something we should discuss. But I could hear Vivian's voice behind his words. He'd come home with printouts of condos in the Pearl District, sleek modern spaces that looked nothing like home. He'd mention how much easier it would be not to worry about maintenance on an old house, how nice it would be to have amenities like a gym and a doorman. I held firm, but I could feel him slipping away from me, pulled by strings I couldn't see. Then one Saturday morning 3 weeks after that dinner, I found the documents. Ethan had left for a run. I was cleaning his study, something I rarely did because it was his space, but I'd noticed a coffee cup growing mold on his desk and decided to do a quick tidy. When I picked up a stack of folders to dust underneath, something slipped out and fell to the floor. It was a manila folder, unmarked. When I opened it, my hands started to shake. Inside were legal documents, property documents, for my house. There was a quitclaim deed with my signature on it, transferring my sole ownership of the property to joint tenancy with Ethan. Except I'd never signed any quitclaim deed. I'd never even seen this document before. There was a home equity line of credit application, also with my signature, for $200,000 against the house. There was a preliminary listing agreement with a real estate agent, discussing strategies for selling the property, optimal listing price, staging recommendations. And there were emails. Printed emails between Ethan and Vivian, discussing the property, discussing me, discussing their plans. The first one, dated 2 months after our wedding. Mom, Harper is being stubborn about the house. She won't even discuss selling. I need you to back off for now. I'll work on her gradually. Vivian's response, don't be weak, Ethan. You're the husband. You should have authority over marital assets. If you can't convince her, we'll find other ways. Another email from 3 weeks ago. The quitclaim deed is ready. I'll get Harper to sign when I can. She trusts me with all our paperwork. She won't even read it. And Vivian's reply, good. Once it's in joint tenancy, you have the right to make decisions. Push for the sale. The partnership is contingent on this. Don't disappoint me. The newest email from 2 days ago. Making progress. I think she's wearing down. Another few weeks, and we can list it. I have a buyer lined up, one of Mom's investor friends. He'll pay cash, quick close. Harper will be upset, but she'll get over it. I sat on the floor of his study, surrounded by evidence of my husband's betrayal, and the truth crashed over me like a tsunami. This wasn't about smart financial decisions. This was about control. Vivian wanted my house sold because it was mine, because it was something she couldn't control, because it represented my independence, my connection to my own family, my own history. And Ethan, my husband, the man who'd promised to love and cherish me, had been working with her all along to take it away. The forged signatures were a crime. The secret HELIC application was fraud. But worse than any of that was the casual way they discussed manipulating me, wearing me down, treating me like an obstacle to be overcome rather than a person, a partner, a wife. My hands were still shaking as I pulled out my phone and took photos of every document, every email, every piece of evidence in that folder. I created a new album in my cloud storage, uploaded everything, and made sure it was backed up in 3 different places. Then I carefully put everything back exactly as I'd found it. When Ethan came home from his run, sweaty and cheerful, I was in the kitchen making coffee, acting like my entire world hadn't just shattered. Morning, babe, he said, kissing my cheek. Beautiful day out there. You should have come running with me. Maybe next time, I said, my voice sounding normal to my own ears despite the screaming in my head. He grabbed a glass of water, drank it down, then headed toward his study. I've got some work to catch up on. Client meeting Monday morning. No problem, I said. I've got some errands to run anyway. I waited until I heard his study door close. Then I grabbed my purse, my phone, and my car keys, and I walked out of my house, the house my aunt left me, the house my husband was plotting to steal. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there, couldn't pretend everything was fine, couldn't look at Ethan without seeing the betrayal written in those emails. I ended up at Olivia's apartment, my best friend since college, the one person I knew I could trust. When she opened the door and saw my face, she didn't ask questions, just pulled me inside and held me while I cried. When I could finally speak, I told her everything. The weird behavior, the gaslighting, the documents, the emails. She listened without interrupting, her face growing darker with every detail. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Harper, you need a lawyer. Today. Right now. It's Saturday. I don't care. I know someone. A real estate attorney. She's aggressive as hell, and she won't let them get away with this." Olivia was already pulling out her phone. Her name is Rachel Martinez. She helped my sister with a property dispute. She'll know what to do. 20 minutes later, I was on a video call with Rachel Martinez, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who looked at my evidence with the focus of a hawk spotting prey. "They forged your signature," she said. "That's fraud. If they've actually submitted any of these documents, that's also filing false instruments, which is a felony, and attempting to encumber the property without your knowledge or consent. We've got them. What do?" I asked. "First, you don't sign anything. Not even if Ethan puts a gun to your head, metaphorically speaking. Second, you need to file a police report for the forgery. Third, we're going to put a freeze on the property. Make sure no transactions can go through. And fourth, we're going to find out exactly what Vivian and Ethan have been up to." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "I have to ask, Harper, what do you want the outcome to be here? Are you trying to save the marriage or end it?" I thought about Ethan kissing my cheek that morning, cheerful and loving, while in his study sat evidence of months of deception. I thought about Vivian's cold eyes and her vicious smile. I thought about the life I'd imagined when I said yes on top of Angel's Rest, and the reality of what my marriage had become. "I want my house protected," I said. "I want to know the full extent of what they've done. And then I'll decide what comes next." Rachel nodded. "Fair enough. I'm going to need copies of everything you found. And Harper, whatever you do, don't let them know you're onto them. Not yet. We need to see how deep this goes." I spent the rest of the weekend at Olivia's, telling Ethan I needed some space, that I was having a girls' weekend. He seemed relieved, actually, which should have hurt, but mostly just confirmed what I already knew. He was happy to have me out of the way while he worked on his plans. On Monday morning, while Ethan was at work, I met with Rachel in person. She'd already started investigating, and what she'd found made my blood run cold. The quitclaim deed had been filed. Officially, on paper, I no longer own my house solely. Ethan and I were joint tenants, which meant he had legal standing to make decisions about the property. The HELOC application hadn't been submitted yet, thank God, but it was ready to go. And here's what really made my skin crawl. Rachel found records of multiple visits to my house by a woman named Cassidy Monroe. According to public record searches, Cassidy was Ethan's college girlfriend, the one he dated for 3 years before they broke up. The one he'd never mentioned to me. "How do you know she was at my house?" I asked. "Your alarm system records," Rachel said. "I had you give me access, remember? The logs show someone entering your home with a key code on dates when you and Ethan weren't there. I ran the number through a few databases, and it comes back to Cassidy Monroe. Why would Ethan's ex-girlfriend have access to my house? That's what we need to find out." Rachel pulled up a photo on her laptop. "Is this her?" I looked at the image of a tall, elegant woman with auburn hair and perfect posture. She looked vaguely familiar, though I couldn't place where I might have seen her. "I don't know," I said. "I've never met her. Ethan never mentioned having a serious girlfriend before me." According to their social media history, they were together from sophomore year through graduation. Then she went to law school, and he went to work for the family business, and they broke up. But here's the interesting part. Rachel pulled up another document. Cassidy Monroe works for Patterson and Stone. The name meant nothing to me. Patterson and Stone is the law firm that represents Caldwell Properties, Rachel explained. They handle all the family business legal work, real estate contracts, corporate law, estate planning, everything. The pieces were starting to fall into place, forming a picture that made me feel physically sick. "You think Vivian kept them in touch?" I said slowly. "I think Vivian may have orchestrated your entire relationship," Rachel said bluntly. "Think about it. Where did you meet Ethan?" "At a hospital fundraiser." "Who invited him to that fundraiser?" I had to think. "I don't know. He just said he was there representing the family business. Rachel nodded. Caldwell Properties doesn't usually donate to children's hospitals. I checked their giving history. Corporate philanthropy, arts and culture, business associations. But not children's healthcare. That event was an outlier. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't think it was an accident that Ethan was at that fundraiser. I think someone made sure he was there right around the time you inherited a very valuable piece of property. The implications were staggering. The romantic meeting, the whirlwind courtship, the perfect proposal. Had any of it been real? Or had I been marked as a target from the moment Aunt Rosemary's will was read? We need proof, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. We need to know for sure. Then we need to find out what Cassidy Monroe is doing in your house, Rachel said, and why Vivian Caldwell has been meeting with her regularly. That last part was new. Vivian's been meeting with Cassidy? Lunch every Tuesday at the Heathman Hotel for the past 8 months. Like clockwork. I've got credit card receipts, restaurant reservations, the works. Rachel leaned forward. Harper, these people are planning something big. The house is just the beginning. We need to know what their endgame is before we make our move. I thought about those emails, about Ethan's casual cruelty in discussing how he'd manipulate me. I thought about Vivian's cold smile and her threats. I thought about a stranger with a key to my home, going through my things, violating my private space. How do we find out? I asked. Rachel smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. We set a trap. Rachel's plan was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in what it required me to do. You're going to go home and act like nothing happened, she said, sitting across from me in her downtown office, the city lights of Portland twinkling below us through the floor-to-ceiling windows. You're going to be the perfect wife, loving, trusting, maybe even a little defeated about the house situation. You're going to make them think they're winning. While you do what? I asked. While I find out exactly what they're planning. She slid a small device across her desk. It looked like a USB charging block, the kind you plug into the wall. This is an audio recording device. Plan it somewhere in your house where they're likely to have conversations. The living room, maybe, or Ethan's study. It's voice-activated and uploads directly to a secure cloud server. Completely legal since it's your house and you have every right to record what happens in it. I picked up the device, turning it over in my hands. It was so ordinary looking, so innocuous. You want me to spy on my own husband? I want you to document his crimes, Rachel corrected. Harper, they've already committed fraud by filing forged documents. Now we need to know what else they're planning, and more importantly, we need them to incriminate themselves on record. Emails can be explained away, but their own voices, discussing their schemes in detail, that's evidence that will hold up anywhere. My stomach churned, but I nodded. What choice did I have? There's something else, Rachel continued. I've been doing more digging into Vivian Caldwell's business practices. She's very good at hiding things, but I found some interesting patterns. Over the past 15 years, Caldwell Properties has acquired 7 residential properties under questionable circumstances. All of them involved young women who married into the family or became entangled with the business somehow. All of them eventually lost their properties to Vivian, usually through complicated legal maneuvers or pressure tactics. 7 women? I felt sick. 7 that I can confirm. There may be more. Rachel pulled up a file on her computer. One of them, a woman named Patricia Oakes, married Vivian's nephew 12 years ago. She'd inherited a commercial building in Northwest Portland from her father. Within 2 years of the marriage, the building was transferred to Caldwell Properties. Patricia and the nephew divorced shortly after. She tried to sue to get it back, but Vivian's lawyers buried her in motions. She eventually gave up. What happened to her? She moved to Seattle, started over. But when I called her yesterday, she was very interested to hear that Vivian might be up to her old tricks. Rachel smiled slightly. She's willing to talk to you if you want. She might have insights into how Vivian operates. I didn't want to talk to Patricia. I wanted to know I wasn't crazy, that this pattern of predatory behavior was real and documented. But more than that, I was starting to realize something that made my blood run cold. Ethan knew, I said slowly. He had to have known. If this is a pattern, if Vivian's been doing this for 15 years, then Ethan knew exactly what he was getting into when he married me. Rachel's expression was sympathetic but firm. That's what we need to prove. Because right now, he could claim he's just a dutiful son following his mother's business advice. We need to show premeditation, planning, intent to defraud. That's where Cassidy Monroe comes in. The ex-girlfriend. The ex-girlfriend who conveniently works for the law firm that handles all of Caldwell Properties' legal work, who has a key to your house, and who meets with Vivian every Tuesday like clockwork. Rachel leaned forward. I want to know what they talk about at those lunches. And I think I've found a way to find out. She explained her plan. The Heathman Hotel, where Vivian and Cassidy met, was an upscale establishment with a restaurant popular for business lunches. Rachel had a contact there, a manager she'd helped in a property dispute years ago. He owed her a favor. He can get us the table next to theirs, Rachel said. Close enough to overhear, especially if we have the right equipment. And before you ask, yes, it's legal. Oregon is a one-party consent state for recording, but in a public space like a restaurant, there's no expectation of privacy. If they're discussing illegal activities in public, that's on them. You want me to go to this lunch? I said. It wasn't a question. I want you to hear it firsthand. I want you to understand exactly who you're dealing with. Rachel's voice softened. Harper, I know this is hard. I know you're still processing everything. But you need to see this through. Because if we don't stop them now, they'll take everything from you. The house is just the beginning. I went home that afternoon with the recording device in my purse and a plan that made me feel like a spy in some cheap thriller. Except this wasn't fiction. This was my life, my marriage, my home. Ethan was in the kitchen when I walked in, making his famous pasta carbonara. He looked so normal, so domestic, standing there with his sleeves rolled up, humming along to the jazz music playing from his phone. This was the man I'd fallen in love with, the man who'd proposed on a mountaintop, who'd held me through my grief when Aunt Rosemary died. Had any of it been real? Hey, babe, he said, looking up with a smile. I thought I'd surprise you with dinner. I know things have been tense lately. I wanted to do something nice. The guilt tactic. Make me feel bad for being upset, for questioning, for resisting. I recognized it now, though I'd missed it so many times before. That's sweet, I said, setting down my purse. It smells amazing. I went upstairs to change, and while I was in our bedroom, I pulled out the recording device. My hands were shaking as I looked around the room, trying to decide where to put it. Rachel had said somewhere they'd likely have private conversations. Ethan's study seemed obvious, but what if he found it? Then I remembered. The living room bookshelf. There was an outlet partially hidden behind Aunt Rosemary's antique globe, the one she'd used to teach me geography when I was little. I could plug the device in there, and it would look like any other charger, easy to overlook. I went downstairs and made small talk with Ethan while dinner finished cooking, then excused myself to use the bathroom. Instead, I slipped into the living room and quickly plugged in the device behind the globe. It fit perfectly, almost invisible unless you were specifically looking for it. When I returned to the kitchen, Ethan had plated the pasta and poured wine. We ate in the dining room, the same room where we'd hosted our first dinner party as a married couple, where we'd laughed with friends and felt like we were building a life. I've been thinking about what my mom said. Ethan began carefully, twirling pasta on his fork. About the house. Here it comes, I thought, the latest manipulation attempt. I know you love this place, he continued. I do too. But maybe she has a point about being strategic with our assets. We don't have to decide anything right now, but maybe we could at least talk to a financial advisor? Get a professional opinion about what makes the most sense for our future. A financial advisor. Probably one of Vivian's people who would tell us exactly what Vivian wanted us to hear. But I smiled and nodded. Maybe. I'm still not ready to think about selling, but I'm willing to listen. The relief on Ethan's face was almost comical. He'd expected a fight, resistance. Instead, I was giving him what he wanted, compliance. We finished dinner and cleaned up together, and then Ethan excused himself to his study to finish some work. I curled up on the living room couch with a book, positioning myself where I could see if anyone approached the bookshelf, my heart pounding every time Ethan walked past. But he didn't notice anything. He went to his study, closed the door, and I heard the low murmur of his voice on a phone call. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. The recording device was capturing everything now, uploading it to Rachel's secure server. I sat there pretending to read while my entire world felt like it was balancing on a knife's edge. The next morning, Tuesday, I called in sick to work. I never called in sick. My supervisor was concerned, asked if I was okay. I told her I had a migraine, needed to rest. She told me to take care of myself. Instead, I met Rachel at a coffee shop 3 blocks from the Heathman Hotel. Did you plant the device? She asked. Last night. In the living room. Good. It's already picked up some interesting conversations. Rachel pulled out her laptop and plugged in earbuds, gesturing for me to take one. Listen to this. Recorded at 10:43 last night. I put in the earbud and listened. It was Ethan's voice on the phone with someone. Yes, I know the timeline is tight, but she's starting to soften on the idea. Give me another 2 weeks, maybe 3, and I can convince her to at least meet with the financial advisor. Once she hears the numbers from a professional, she'll see the sense in selling. A woman's voice responded, and my heart stopped. It was Vivian. 2 weeks is too long, Ethan. The investor I have lined up won't wait forever. He wants to close by the end of the quarter. Mom, I can't push too hard or she'll dig in. You know how stubborn Harper can be. Stubborn. That's a kind word for it. Vivian's voice was dripping with disdain. She's holding on to that house out of spite at this point. Sentimental attachment to a dead woman's memories. It's pathetic. I flinched at the casual cruelty. I'm working on it, Ethan said, his voice tighter. But Cassidy said we need to be careful. If Harper suspects anything, if she finds those documents, this whole thing falls apart. Cassidy worries too much. Harper's not smart enough to figure out. She's a therapist, for God's sake, not a lawyer. She wouldn't know fraud if it bit her. They both laughed. I pulled out the earbud, feeling like I might be sick. There's more, Rachel said gently. But maybe you've heard enough for now.
No.
I put the earbud back in. I need to hear all of it. The conversation continued. They discussed the forged quitclaim deed, how Ethan had gotten me to sign a stack of refinancing documents months ago, slipping the deed in with other paperwork. I'd signed without reading carefully, trusting my husband. He'd counted on that trust. They discussed the Helic application, how they'd used the $200,000 to invest in one of Vivian's development projects, which would conveniently fail, leaving the debt but no asset. And they discussed Cassidy's role. She'd been the one to draft all the documents, using her legal expertise to create paperwork that looked legitimate but was designed to strip me of my rights. She'd been inside my house multiple times, going through my files, looking for anything that might complicate their plans. She'd even taken photos of documents, checking my aunt's original will to make sure there were no provisions protecting the property. She's been thorough, Vivian said approvingly. I knew keeping her close to the family would pay off eventually. When you two broke up, I thought it was a waste. Now I see it was actually perfect. She has no emotional attachment to interfere with business. Unlike me? Ethan's voice had an edge. Darling, you married the girl. You could at least pretend to feel something for her beyond access to her assets. I do feel something for her. Ethan sounded defensive. Harper's sweet.
She's kind.
In another life, maybe it could have been real. But this isn't another life. This is business. The house is worth $800,000 conservatively, possibly more, if we can push the buyers. Your share of that after we pay off the fabricated Helic debt and cover legal fees would be about $400,000. Add that to your partnership buy-in, and you'll own 40% of Caldwell Properties. That's what matters here. The recording ended. I sat in the coffee shop, staring at my cold latte, trying to process what I'd just heard. My marriage was a business transaction. My husband had married me for my house. His mother had orchestrated the entire thing, probably from the moment my aunt's will became public record. And Cassidy, the ex-girlfriend, was the legal architect of my destruction. Harper. Rachel's voice was soft. You okay? No, I said honestly. But I will be. What time is their lunch? 12:30. They have a reservation for 1 p.m., but Vivian always arrives early. I looked at my watch. 11:45. Then we should go. Rachel had secured us a table near the back of the Heathman's restaurant, tucked into a corner with a clear view of the table where Vivian and Cassidy always sat. Our reservation was for 12:15, early enough to be in place before they arrived. The restaurant was beautiful, all dark wood and white tablecloths, with huge windows overlooking the street. The lunch crowd was starting to filter in well-dressed business people, ladies who lunch, the Portland elite. Rachel ordered us food we wouldn't eat and set up her phone on the table, angled toward where Vivian and Cassidy would sit. The phone case had a small directional microphone attachment, nearly invisible, designed for recording meetings. "Remember," Rachel said quietly, "we're just two colleagues having a business lunch. Don't stare. Don't react, no matter what you hear. Just eat, talk, act normal." Vivian arrived at 12:45, impeccable as always in a cream-colored suit with gold jewelry. She was seated at her usual table, ordered a sparkling water, and checked her phone with the entitled air of someone who expected the world to wait on her schedule. Cassidy arrived 10 minutes later, slightly breathless, apologizing for being late. She was even more beautiful in person than in her photos, with that auburn hair falling in perfect waves, wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. They greeted each other warmly, like old friends. Vivian asked about Cassidy's recent cases. Cassidy inquired about Vivian's upcoming charity gala. They ordered lunch, made small talk about mutual acquaintances. I pushed food around my plate and tried not to stare. Then, after the waiter delivered their entrees and departed, Vivian leaned forward slightly, and her voice dropped. "So, tell me about our little problem." Cassidy glanced around, ensuring no one was listening. She had no idea that the phone on our table, 15 feet away, was capturing every word. "It's handled," Cassidy said. "I went to the house again last Thursday while they were both at work. I found Harper's personal files, and there's nothing that complicates our position. The trust your late husband set up for her doesn't include any protections on the house specifically. It's just cash distributions for property taxes and maintenance. And Harper hasn't mentioned anything to Ethan about finding the documents. Not according to him. He thinks she's completely in the dark." Cassidy took a sip of wine. "Although I did recommend he move them from his study. If she's cleaning or organizing, she might stumble across them." "Where are they now?" "In his car. Locked in the glove compartment." I made a mental note. Ethan's car. Black Audi sedan, parked in our driveway every night. "Good," Vivian said. "And the timeline?" "I have a buyer who's eager to close. He's offering $850 cash as is. I told him we'd have an answer by the end of the month. Ethan thinks he can get Harper to agree to sell within 2 weeks. He's playing the financial responsibility card, making her feel like she's being irrational and emotional for wanting to keep it. Classic." Vivian smiled. "It worked on Patricia. It worked on Monica. It'll work on Harper. These sentimental women are all the same. They think love conquers all, that their little fairy tale marriages mean something. Then reality hits and they fold. What if she doesn't?" Cassidy asked. "What if she refuses to sell? Then we move to Plan B. The quit-claim deed is filed, which means Ethan has equal ownership. We can force a partition sale. It'll be messy, take longer, and we'll lose some value to legal fees, but the outcome is the same. Harper loses the house." My hand clenched around my fork, so tight my knuckles went white. Rachel caught my eye and gave a small, almost imperceptible shake of her head. "Don't react. There's something else," Cassidy said, and her voice took on a different tone. Cautious, almost nervous. "I ran into an old law school classmate yesterday. She works at Morrison and Dunn now, doing real estate litigation. She asked me about Caldwell Properties, said there were rumors in the legal community about aggressive property acquisition tactics." Vivian's expression didn't change, but something cold flashed in her eyes. "Rumors. Nothing specific. Just whispers that Caldwell Properties has a pattern of acquiring residential properties under questionable circumstances. My friend is asking if I knew anything about it, since I do work for your firm." "What did you tell her?" "That I handle corporate contracts, not acquisitions, and I had no idea what she was talking about." Cassidy met Vivian's gaze. "But Vivian, if people are starting to notice a pattern, we might need to be more careful. More subtle. After this one we will be," Vivian said. "Harper's house is the last residential property I'm interested in. After this, it's all commercial development, shopping centers, office buildings. Nothing that brings nosy do-gooders asking questions about vulnerable young women." Vulnerable young women. She said it like we were prey animals, weak and stupid. "And Ethan?" Cassidy asked. "Are you really going to give him 40% of the company?" Vivian laughed, a sound like ice cubes in a glass. "Of course not. He'll get his partnership, his fancy title, his name on the letterhead. But the actual ownership structure is more complicated than he understands. I'll still control decision-making, still control the money. He'll just think he's an equal partner. You're going to cheat your own son? I'm going to teach my son how business really works. Sentiment is expensive, Cassidy. Love is a liability. The sooner Ethan learns that, the better equipped he'll be to run this company when I'm gone. They moved on to other topics after that, discussing actual business matters, legal strategies for an upcoming commercial development. But I'd heard enough. We stayed until they left, maintaining our cover as business colleagues having lunch. When Vivian and Cassidy finally departed at 2:15, Vivian kissing Cassidy's cheek and promising to see her next Tuesday, Rachel and I waited another 10 minutes before leaving ourselves. In Rachel's car, parked 2 blocks away, I finally let myself react. She's done this to other women, I said, my voice shaking. 7 that you found. How many more that you didn't? How many women has she destroyed? Too many, Rachel said. But you're going to be the last one. Because unlike the others, you know what she's doing before it's too late, and you have me helping you fight back. What do we do now? Rachel was already pulling up files on her laptop. Now we connect all the dots. I've been researching those other 7 women. I think we can find at least 3 of them willing to talk, willing to testify about Vivian's pattern of predatory behavior. And with the recordings you're getting from your house, plus what we just captured at lunch, we're building a case that goes beyond simple fraud. This is conspiracy. This is a pattern of criminal behavior. This is RICO territory, if we can prove it. RICO? My knowledge of legal terms was limited. Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Basically, a law designed to prosecute organized crime. If we can show that Vivian has been running a systematic scheme to defraud multiple women of their property, using her business and her family as cover, that's racketeering. The scope of what Rachel was suggesting took my breath away. You want to go after Vivian for organized crime? I want to make sure she never does this to anyone else, Rachel said fiercely. And I want you to not just get your house back, Harper. I want you to destroy her. Legally, financially, socially. I want her to lose everything, the same way she's made other women lose everything. It was a seductive idea. Not just stopping Vivian, but actually beating her at her own game. Making her face consequences for years of predatory behavior.
But it was also terrifying.
How long would something like that take? I asked. Months, maybe longer. And it would require you to maintain your cover that whole time. Living with Ethan, pretending everything is fine, letting him think his plan is working while we build our case. I thought about going home to Ethan tonight, smiling and kissing him, lying next to him in bed, while knowing everything I now knew. Could I do that? Could I be that good an actress? Then I thought about Patricia Oakes, who'd lost her father's building. About the 6 other women whose names I didn't even know yet, who'd been targeted and destroyed by Vivian's greed. About all the future women who would fall into this trap if someone didn't stop it. Tell me how to do it, I said. Over the next week, I became a different person. Or maybe I became myself for the first time, shedding the naive, trusting woman who'd believed in fairy tale love and family loyalty. I went home every night and played the role of dutiful wife. I cooked dinners and asked about Ethan's day. I laughed at his jokes and curled up next to him on the couch to watch movies. I was affectionate and sweet and exactly what he expected me to be. And all the while, the recording device in the living room captured everything. Rachel was right. Once they thought I was beaten, once they believed I was coming around to the idea of selling, they got sloppy. Ethan and Vivian had phone conversations in the living room, discussing their plans openly. Cassidy came by the house twice more when I was supposedly at work. I'd actually called in sick and was watching from Olivia's car parked down the street, documenting every visit, every time she let herself into my home with a key I'd never authorized her to have. Rachel, meanwhile, was tracking down the other women. She found Patricia Oakes in Seattle, who agreed to a video call after hearing what Vivian was trying to do to me. Patricia was in her late 40s, a tired-looking woman with sad eyes, but when she talked about Vivian, those eyes blazed with fury. She took everything from me, Patricia said. My father's building, my marriage, my self-respect. And when I tried to fight back, her lawyers destroyed me. They filed motion after motion, buried me in legal fees I couldn't afford. I had to give up. I had no choice. I'm sorry, I said, meaning it. Don't be sorry.
Fight.
Fight like hell. Because Vivian Caldwell is a predator, and she won't stop until someone makes her stop. Rachel found 2 more women willing to talk. Monica Reyes, who'd been engaged to one of Vivian's business partners and lost a lakeside cabin her grandmother had left her. And Jennifer Wu, who'd married Vivian's nephew's best friend and lost a duplex she'd inherited from her mother. The pattern was identical every time. Young woman inherits valuable property. Man connected to Vivian's orbit courts her, marries her, or gets engaged. Documents are forged, pressure is applied, legal manipulations occur. Property ends up owned by Caldwell Properties or sold to one of Vivian's associates. Relationship ends shortly after. We had 3 women willing to testify. We had recordings of Vivian discussing her schemes. We had documentation of the forged quitclaim deed. We had proof of Cassidy's involvement, of her unauthorized access to my home. We were building a case, but we needed more. We needed to catch them in the act, making their move to actually steal the property. Rachel said that's when their intent would be clearest, when the evidence would be most damning. So we set a trap. I told Ethan I was ready to meet with a financial advisor. His relief was palpable. Within 2 days, he'd set up an appointment with a man named Robert Thornton, who conveniently worked at an investment firm that did a lot of business with Caldwell Properties. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday afternoon at 2. I was supposed to take a half day off work. Rachel told me to wear a wire. White, I'd asked. Like in the movies? Exactly like in the movies. We need you to get them talking about their plans, specifically about what they intend to do with the house proceeds, about the fake Helic debt, about all of it. Robert Thornton is in on the scheme. Get him talking. The wire was actually a small microphone attached to my bra, with a transmitter the size of a credit card tucked into my waistband. I felt ridiculous and terrified and strangely powerful all at once. Ethan picked me up from work, cheerful and chatty. I think you're really going to like Robert, he said as we drove downtown. He's smart, practical. He'll help us see the big picture. The big picture being how they could steal my house, I thought, but didn't say. Robert Thornton's office was in one of those gleaming high-rises downtown, all glass and steel and expensive art on the walls. He was in his 50s, silver-haired, wearing a suit that probably cost $3,000. He greeted us warmly, offered coffee, made small talk about the weather. Then he pulled out a presentation folder. I've been reviewing your financial situation, he began, and I have to say, you're in a unique position. The property in Laurelhurst is a significant asset, but it's not working for you. What do you mean, not working? I asked, playing my role. It's dead equity. It's just sitting there, appreciating slowly, but not generating any income. If you were to sell and reinvest the proceeds, you could be earning substantial returns. Let me show you some projections. He pulled out charts and graphs, showing how selling the house for $800,000 and investing the money could generate returns of 6 to 8% annually. How we could buy a nice condo for $400,000, invest the rest, and live off the income while still building wealth. It was a convincing presentation. If you didn't know, it was all a lie. That does sound good, I said slowly. But I'm confused about one thing. Ethan mentioned something about a home equity line of credit. I don't remember us opening one. Robert and Ethan exchanged a glance. It was so quick I almost missed it. Well, Robert said carefully, you did sign the paperwork a few months ago. It was part of a refinancing package. You might not remember specifically, there were a lot of documents. How much is the Helic for? I asked. $200,000, Ethan said. We discussed using it for some home improvements, remember? But we haven't drawn on it yet. We'd never discussed any such thing. And if we sell the house, what happens to that debt? I asked. It would need to be paid off at closing, Robert said. Standard procedure. But with the sale price we're projecting, there would be more than enough to cover it and still leave you with substantial proceeds. How much, exactly? Robert did some quick calculations. After paying off the Helic, closing costs, and real estate commissions, you'd net about $550,000. Still a very healthy amount to invest. I did my own math. $800,000 minus $200 for the fake Helic, minus closing costs and commissions, and, conveniently, the amount that would actually go to me was far less than the house is worth. The 200,000 would go to Vivian's investment project that would fail. Another chunk would go to fees, probably funneled back to Vivian's associates. By the time it was all done, I'd be lucky to see 300,000 from a house worth 800. And Ethan would get his partnership, his name on the company, his reward for successfully defrauding his wife. I need to think about it, I said. It's a big decision. Of course, Robert said smoothly. Take your time. But I would recommend not waiting too long. The market is strong right now, and these opportunities don't last forever. In the car afterward, Ethan was excited. He made a great case, didn't he? I think this could really be good for us, Harper. Maybe, I said noncommittally. That night, I met with Rachel and played her the recording from The Wire. She listened intently, making notes.
This is good, she said.
We've got Thornton discussing the fake Helic like it's legitimate. We've got Ethan backing up the lie about you signing the paperwork. And we've got the financial projections that are designed to hide how much you're actually losing. Is it enough? It's getting there.
But we need one more thing.
We need to catch Vivian orchestrating it. Right now, she's insulated. She can claim she had no idea Ethan and Cassidy were committing fraud, that she's just an innocent businesswoman. We need to tie her directly to the scheme.
How?
Rachel smiled. We're going to use their own plan against them. Next Tuesday, Vivian and Cassidy will have their usual lunch at the Heathman. I've arranged for a slight complication. A woman who looks remarkably like you will be having lunch there at the same time, with a man who is very obviously a lawyer, going over documents and looking very serious. You're going to make them think I figured it out, I said slowly. I'm going to make them panic. And when people panic, they make mistakes. They'll have a conversation about what to do, how to handle the fact that you might be onto them. And we'll record every word. The plan was risky, but it was also brilliant. If Vivian and Cassidy discussed how to handle my supposed discovery of their fraud, if they talked about ways to intimidate me or accelerate their timeline, it would prove conspiracy and premeditation. I spent the weekend in a state of nervous anticipation. I played my role at home, being sweet and thoughtful, even making Ethan his favorite breakfast on Sunday morning. He seemed relaxed, confident. He thought he was winning. On Monday, Rachel called. Everything is set for tomorrow. The woman playing you will be at the Heathman at 12:30. Vivian and Cassidy have their usual reservation for 1. Our recording equipment will be in place. What do? You go to work like normal. Act like you don't know anything. I'll contact you as soon as we have the recording.
Tuesday was the longest day of my life.
I went through the motions at work, helping kids with their therapy exercises, writing progress notes, attending a team meeting. But my mind was miles away, imagining what was happening at the Heathman Hotel. Finally, at 3:30, my phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. We got it. You need to hear this. I left work early, claiming the migraine I'd been pretending to have all day was getting worse. I drove to Rachel's office, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. In her office, Rachel had the recording queued up on her laptop. Before you listen to this, she said, I want you to be prepared. It's bad, Harper. It's worse than we thought. She pressed play. Vivian's voice came through the speakers, sharp and agitated. That was her. That was definitely Harper at the table by the window. With a lawyer. Cassidy's voice, concerned. Are you sure? I know what my daughter-in-law looks like, Cassidy. She was going through documents. Legal documents. I saw letterhead from Morrison and Dunn. Do you know what that firm specializes in? Real estate litigation and fraud cases. A pause. She knows, Cassidy said. Somehow she found out. The question is, how much does she know and what is she planning to do about it? Vivian's voice was ice cold. We need to move fast. Accelerate the timeline. Get Ethan to push her harder to sign the sale agreement. If she's already retained counsel, we need to close this before she can file any kind of injunction. Vivian, if she's already talking to lawyers, pushing her might backfire. She could file a police report for the forged quitclaim deed. That's felony fraud. Then we need to give her a reason not to file. Ethan needs to talk to her, convince her that any legal action would destroy their marriage. Appeal to her emotions. Make her feel guilty for not trusting him. You know how these sentimental women think. They'd rather preserve the relationship than fight for their rights. My stomach turned. What if that doesn't work? Cassidy asked. Then we move to more aggressive tactics. We have leverage. Her job, for instance. I know the CEO of Children's Healthcare. One phone call from me suggesting that Harper has been unstable, possibly stealing medications, and they have to investigate. Even if they find nothing, the investigation itself would be enough to damage her reputation. You destroy her career? Cassidy sounded shocked. I do whatever necessary to protect my family's interests. This isn't personal, Cassidy. It's business. Harper is an obstacle. Obstacles get removed. There was more. They discussed other pressure tactics. Vivian mentioned contacting my father, suggesting to him that I was having a mental health crisis and needed intervention. They discussed having Cassidy draft documents that would make it look like I'd agreed to the sale, forging my signature, if necessary. By the time the recording ended, I was crying. Not from sadness, but from pure rage. She was going to destroy my career, I said. She was going to go after my family. She was going to make everyone think I was crazy. Yes, Rachel said. But she made a mistake. She discussed all of it in a public restaurant, and now we have proof. Conspiracy to commit fraud, conspiracy to defame, possibly even conspiracy to file false reports with the police. Harper, this recording, combined with everything else we have, is enough to bury her. I wiped my eyes. Then let's bury her. Rachel's smile was fierce. Tomorrow morning, we're going to the police. We're going to file a report about the forged quitclaim deed. Then we're going to file for an emergency restraining order preventing any sale or encumbrance of your property. And then we're going to contact the Oregon State Bar about Cassidy Monroe's conduct. What about Ethan? I asked quietly. What about him? I thought about the man I'd married. The man who'd stood on a mountaintop and promised to love me forever. The man who'd been lying to me from day one, who'd married me for my house, who'd let his mother plot to destroy my career and my reputation. I want a divorce, I said. And I want him prosecuted for fraud. Rachel nodded. Then that's what we'll do. But Harper, tomorrow, when all of this blows up, you can't be home. You can't be anywhere Ethan or Vivian can get to you. Pack a bag tonight. Take everything you value. And be ready to disappear for a few days while we execute this plan. That night, I went home and packed. Not much, just clothes and personal items, some photos, Aunt Rosemary's jewelry. I waited until Ethan was asleep, and then I moved through our house like a ghost, taking what was mine and leaving behind the life I'd thought I had. I slept in the guest room, claiming I didn't want to disturb him with my tossing and turning from the migraine. He accepted the explanation without question. In the morning, while Ethan was in the shower, I took my packed bags and put them in my car. Then I went to work like it was any normal day. At 10 a.m., Rachel texted me. It's done. Police report filed. Restraining order granted. The bar has been notified about Cassidy. And Vivian is about to get served with a lawsuit from Patricia, Monica, and Jennifer for conspiracy to defraud. It's all in motion. I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and waited for my phone to ring. It took 20 minutes. Harper. Ethan's voice was frantic. Harper, where are you? The police were just here. They're saying I forged documents? That I committed fraud? This is insane. Where are you? I know everything, Ethan, I said calmly. I know about the plan with your mother. I know about Cassidy. I know about the other women you've done this to. And I have proof of all of it. Silence. Harper, I can explain. Don't. Just don't. I've heard enough of your explanations, enough of your lies. You married me for my house. You never loved me. This entire relationship was a fraud. That's not true. I do love you. You don't even know what love means, I said. Love isn't plotting to steal someone's inheritance. Love isn't forging documents. Love isn't letting your mother threaten to destroy someone's career. I trusted you, Ethan. I gave you everything. And you betrayed me in the worst way possible. Please, can we just talk about this? Face to face? I'll make it right, I promise. There's nothing to make right. It's over. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. And Ethan? The police are going to want to talk to you about the forged quitclaim deed. I'd suggest getting a lawyer. A real one, not Cassidy. I hung up. My phone immediately started ringing again. Ethan, Vivian, even Cassidy. I blocked all their numbers. Then I drove to Olivia's apartment, where I would stay for the next week while Rachel's plan unfolded and the truth about Vivian Caldwell's predatory empire became very, very public. The war had begun, and I was going to win. The first 48 hours after I filed the police report felt like living in the eye of a hurricane. I knew the storm was raging around me, but from Olivia's guest room, isolated from my phone and email, disconnected from social media, I existed in an eerie bubble of quiet. Rachel was handling everything. The police investigation, the restraining order enforcement, the coordination with Patricia, Monica, and Jennifer. She called me twice a day with updates, her voice crisp and professional, never revealing how she really felt about the chaos we'd unleashed. On the third day, she arrived at Olivia's apartment with her laptop and a grim expression. "We need to talk," she said. Olivia made coffee and then tactfully disappeared into her bedroom, leaving Rachel and me at the kitchen table. "Vivian is fighting back," Rachel began. "Hard. She's retained criminal defense counsel, a big firm out of Seattle. They're already filing motions to dismiss, claiming the recordings were obtained illegally, that the police report is based on hearsay and speculation. But we have proof," I said. "The forged quit-claim deed. The recordings." "We do. And the police are taking it seriously. They've opened an investigation into Ethan for forgery and filing false instruments. But Vivian's lawyers are very good at muddying the waters. They're claiming Ethan acted alone, that Vivian had no knowledge of the forged documents, that she's just a concerned mother who gave her son business advice. That's a lie. I know it's a lie.
You know it's a lie.
But proving it in court is different than knowing it in your gut." Rachel pulled up a document on her laptop. "Vivian's lawyers have also filed a defamation lawsuit against you." My stomach dropped. Defamation. They're claiming you've made false and malicious statements about Vivian and Caldwell Properties, that you've damaged her reputation and business relationships. It's a slap suit, a strategic lawsuit against public participation. Basically, they're trying to intimidate you into dropping your claims by burying you in legal fees and making you too afraid to speak publicly. Can they do that? They can file it. Whether it'll survive a motion to dismiss is another question. Oregon has anti-SLAPP statutes designed to protect people from exactly this kind of retaliatory litigation. But it's still stressful and expensive to defend against. I felt the walls closing in. "What about Cassidy? You said you reported her to the bar." "I did. They've opened an investigation into her conduct. Unauthorized access to your home, drafting fraudulent documents, using her position as legal counsel to facilitate a crime. If they find she violated ethical rules, she could be disbarred." Rachel's expression darkened. "But here's where it gets complicated. Cassidy has disappeared." "Disappeared?" "She didn't show up for work yesterday or today. Her apartment appears empty. She's not answering her phone. It's like she vanished." A chill ran down my spine. "You think Vivian did something to her?" "I think Vivian threw her under the bus. Cassidy knows where all the bodies are buried, so to speak. She drafted the documents. She had direct knowledge of the fraud. If she testifies, Vivian goes down with her. But if Cassidy disappears, if she can't be compelled to testify, then Vivian can claim she was deceived by a rogue attorney. So Vivian either scared her into running or paid her to disappear. That would be my guess. I've got a private investigator trying to track her down, but so far nothing." I stared at my coffee, watching the cream swirl into brown clouds. Everything I'd set in motion was spinning out of control in ways I hadn't anticipated. "There's something else," Rachel said quietly. "It's about Ethan." My chest tightened. "What about him?" "He's been posting on social media, playing the victim, claiming you falsely accused him of crimes he didn't commit, that you're having some kind of breakdown. He's got friends and family rallying around him, posting about what a good guy he is, how devoted he was to you." She turned the laptop toward me. Ethan's Facebook page was filled with posts from people I recognized. His college friends, his business associates, even some of our mutual acquaintances. They were all expressing support, shocked that I would make such terrible accusations, concern for Ethan's well-being. One post from his cousin read, "Ethan is the most honest person I know. Harper must be going through something serious to make these kinds of false claims. Praying for both of them." Another from a woman I'd met at a charity event. "I've known the Caldwell family for years. They're good people. This is clearly a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. He's creating a narrative, I said slowly, making me look unstable. Exactly what Vivian said she'd do on that recording. They're executing her playbook. Rachel closed the laptop. Harper, this is going to get uglier before it gets better. They're going to attack your credibility, your mental state, your motives. They're going to try to make you look like a vindictive ex-wife lying for revenge. What do? You stay strong. You stick to the truth. And you trust that evidence speaks louder than social media posts. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We have the recordings, Harper. We have the forged documents. We have 3 other women ready to testify about Vivian's pattern of behavior. The truth is on our side. But truth, I was learning, didn't always win just because it was true. The next day, I returned to work. I'd been out for a week, and I couldn't hide forever. My supervisor, Danielle, a kind woman in her 50s who'd been at the hospital for 20 years, called me into her office as soon as I arrived. Harper, sit down, she said, her expression troubled. We need to talk. My heart sank. Did someone call you about me? Vivian Caldwell called our CEO directly. She expressed concerns about your mental health, suggested you might be going through a crisis. She didn't make any specific allegations, but she strongly implied that the hospital should look into whether you're fit to work with vulnerable children. I felt my face flush with anger. That's retaliation. I filed a police report about crimes her son committed, and she's trying to get me fired. I know. And I told our CEO exactly that. I've worked with you for 3 years, Harper. I know you're one of the best therapists we have. The kids love you. The parents trust you, and you've never given me a single reason to question your judgment or stability. Danielle leaned forward. But I need to ask you directly. Are you okay? Is there anything going on that I should know about? I took a deep breath and told her an abbreviated version of the truth. My husband had forged documents to try to steal my house. His mother had orchestrated the fraud as part of a pattern of predatory behavior against other women. I discovered the scheme, reported it to police, and filed for divorce. Now they were retaliating by trying to damage my reputation. Danielle listened without interrupting. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Do you have proof of what you're saying? She asked. Yes. Police reports, recordings, legal documents. My attorney can provide everything. Then here's what's going to happen. I'm going to tell the CEO that I've spoken with you, that you've provided documentation supporting your claims, and that you remain a valued member of our team. I'm also going to recommend that if Vivian Caldwell contacts us again, we refer her to our legal department and refuse to engage with her harassment. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep being the excellent therapist you've always been. And Harper? She smiled slightly. Give them hell. Women like Vivian Caldwell need to be stopped. I went back to work, throwing myself into therapy sessions with the kids, finding comfort in the simple, honest work of helping a 5-year-old learn to tie his shoes, teaching a 7-year-old strategies for managing sensory overload, celebrating when an 8-year-old who'd been struggling with fine motor skills successfully cut along a curved line. But at lunch, sitting in the break room, I overheard 2 nurses talking. Did you hear about Harper Caldwell? One of them said. Apparently she's going through a nasty divorce and making all kinds of crazy accusations against her ex's family. I heard she tried to get him arrested for fraud or something, the other replied. But my cousin knows someone who works at Caldwell Properties, and they say the family is really respected in the business community. It's probably just a vindictive ex-wife thing. I sat there, frozen, realizing that Vivian's strategy was working. She was poisoning the well, making people doubt me before they even heard my side. That evening, Rachel called with more bad news. The police investigation into Ethan has stalled, she said. His lawyers are claiming the quitclaim deed was a legitimate marital decision, that you consented to the change in ownership even if you don't remember the specific document. Without Cassidy to testify that the signature was forged, it's hard to prove. What about the handwriting analysis? Can't they compare my signature? They can, and they are. But Ethan's lawyers are already preparing to argue that signature variation is normal, that you were stressed when you signed, that the differences aren't definitive proof of forgery. Rachel sighed. Harper, I'm not saying we can't win this. I'm saying it's going to be harder than we thought. What about the recordings? Vivian and Cassidy discussing the scheme? Vivian's lawyers are challenging the admissibility. They're arguing that the recordings were obtained through illegal surveillance, that their conversation at the restaurant was private despite being in public, that we entrapped them by staging the fake lawyer meeting. Is any of that true?
No.
But they're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. That's what expensive lawyers do. I felt desperation creeping in. What about Patricia and the other women? Their testimony about Vivian's pattern. That's still our strongest angle. But Vivian's lawyers are going to attack their credibility too, claim they're disgruntled former associates with axes to grind, that their cases are completely different from yours, and therefore irrelevant. So what do? Rachel was quiet for a moment. We need something more. Something that directly ties Vivian to the fraud. Something so clear and undeniable that her lawyers can't spin it away. Like what? I don't know yet, but I'm working on it. I hung up feeling defeated. I'd done everything right. I'd gathered evidence, documented the fraud, reported it to authorities. And still, Vivian's money and power and connections were shielding her from consequences. The next week was a special kind of hell. I went to work, smiled through my sessions with the kids, and came home to Olivia's apartment where I compulsively checked my phone for updates from Rachel that rarely came. Ethan kept posting on social media, cultivating his image as the wronged husband. His mother joined in, posting about family loyalty and false accusations, never mentioning me by name but making it clear who she was talking about. I lost friends. People I'd known for years, couples Ethan and I had socialized with, stopped responding to my messages. Some unfriended me on social media. Others sent concerned messages asking if I was getting help for my breakdown. Only Olivia and a few close friends stood by me. Everyone else believed Vivian's narrative. Then, 11 days after I'd filed the police report, something shifted. I was at work when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. MS. Caldwell, this is Detective Sarah Chun with Portland PD. We met briefly when you filed your initial report. Can you come to the station this afternoon? I have some information about your case. My hands trembled as I typed back.
Yes.
What time? 3 p.m. Ask for me at the front desk. I told Danielle I had a legal appointment and left work early. Rachel met me at the police station, her expression unreadable. Do you know what this is about? I asked. I have a theory, but let's hear what the detective has to say. Detective Chun was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She led Rachel and me to a small conference room and closed the door. Miss Caldwell, we've had a development in your case, she began. Cassidy Monroe has contacted us. My heart leaped. She's talking. She's doing more than talking. She's offering to cooperate fully in exchange for immunity from prosecution. Rachel leaned forward. What does she want immunity for? Everything. The forgery, the fraud, the unauthorized access to Harper's home, conspiracy to commit wire fraud through the fake Helic application. In exchange, she's prepared to testify against both Ethan Caldwell and Vivian Caldwell, and she's providing documentary evidence of the entire scheme. I could barely breathe.
Why?
Why would she do that? Detective Chun pulled out a folder. Because Vivian Caldwell tried to have her killed. The room went silent. I'm sorry, what? Rachel said. 3 days ago, Cassidy Monroe was involved in a single-car accident on Highway 26. Her brakes failed while she was driving through the West Hills. She went off the road, down an embankment. She survived with minor injuries, but the car was totaled. Detective Chun opened the folder and showed us photos of a mangled sedan wrapped around a tree. The accident investigator found evidence of brake line tampering. Someone deliberately sabotaged her vehicle. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Vivian tried to kill her? We can't prove Vivian did it personally. But Cassidy received a phone call 2 hours before the accident from a number registered to one of Vivian's business associates, a man named Marcus Webb. Marcus has a criminal record including assault and intimidation charges. Cassidy says the caller told her to remember what loyalty means and warned her not to talk to police about family business. And then her brakes failed, Rachel said quietly. Cassidy thinks it was a botched murder attempt designed to look like an accident. And she's terrified. She's in protective custody right now, and she's ready to tell us everything she knows. What does everything include? I asked. Detective Chun smiled grimly. According to preliminary conversations, Cassidy can provide evidence of 7 other cases where Vivian Caldwell orchestrated similar schemes. She drafted fraudulent documents for all of them. She has emails, recorded phone calls, financial records showing payments from Caldwell Properties for her consulting services. And she has direct knowledge of Vivian's instructions on each case. That's RICO, Rachel said. That's an organized criminal enterprise. That's exactly what our fraud division thinks. They're coordinating with the FBI now. This isn't just a local fraud case anymore. This is a federal investigation into racketeering. I couldn't process it. Vivian Caldwell, the elegant society woman, was being investigated by the FBI for running a criminal enterprise. It seemed surreal. What happens now? I asked. Now we build the case. Cassidy's testimony, combined with the evidence you've already provided and the testimony from the other victims, should be enough to bring charges against both Vivian and Ethan. We're also investigating the brake tampering incident. If we can tie that back to Vivian, we're talking attempted murder on top of everything else. Detective Chin looked at me directly. Ms. Caldwell, you did the right thing coming forward. If you hadn't reported this, if you hadn't documented everything, Vivian would still be out there targeting vulnerable women. You may have saved lives. I left the police station in a daze. Rachel was talking about legal strategies, about how Cassidy's cooperation changed everything, but I could barely hear her. All I could think about was the mangled car in those photos. Vivian had tried to kill Cassidy to keep her quiet. What would she have done to me if I'd confronted her directly instead of going to the police? Would I have had a convenient accident too? Harper, are you listening? Rachel's voice cut through my thoughts. I'm just processing. I know this is a lot, but this is good news. This is what we needed. With Cassidy's testimony, we can't lose. Can't we? I looked at her. Vivian tried to have someone killed, Rachel. She's desperate and dangerous. What's to stop her from coming after me next? Rachel's expression sobered. That's why I've already filed for an emergency protection order. And why I think you should consider staying somewhere other than Olivia's apartment. Somewhere Vivian can't find you. I can't hide forever. Not forever. Just until Vivian is arrested and held without bail. Which, given the attempted murder investigation, shouldn't be long. But I was tired of hiding. Tired of letting Vivian control my life, even from a distance. Tired of being afraid. No, I said. I'm not running anymore. Vivian wants to intimidate me into silence? She can try. But I'm not going anywhere. Rachel looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded. Okay. But you're getting a security system. And you're not going anywhere alone until this is over. That night, Olivia and I sat on her couch with a bottle of wine, and I told her everything Detective Chin had said. Holy shit, Olivia breathed. Vivian tried to kill Cassidy? Apparently. And now the FBI is involved. The FBI. Harper, this is insane. Your mother-in-law is an actual criminal.
Was.
My ex-mother-in-law. I took a long sip of wine. I keep thinking about all the times I had dinner at her house, all the times she smiled at me with that cold smile. She was planning to rob me the entire time. And if I'd fought back differently, if I'd confronted her instead of going to the police, I might be dead. Olivia hugged me. But you're not dead. You're here, you're safe, and Vivian is going down. You won. Did I? I asked quietly. My marriage is over. My reputation is damaged. I've lost friends. I can't go home to my own house because it's technically a crime scene. Even if I win legally, I've lost so much. You've lost things that weren't real to begin with, Olivia said firmly. Ethan never loved you. Those friends who dropped you weren't real friends. And your reputation? Harper, when the truth comes out, when everyone knows what Vivian did, you're going to be vindicated. You're going to be the woman who took down a criminal enterprise. That's not damage. That's legendary. I wanted to believe her. But lying in Olivia's guest bed that night, staring at the ceiling, all I felt was exhausted. The next morning, I woke to my phone exploding with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, voicemails. I checked the news and understood why. Prominent Portland businesswoman under federal investigation for fraud, racketeering. The story had broken. Some journalist had gotten wind of the FBI investigation and run with it. The article named Vivian Caldwell detailed allegations of a multi-year scheme to defraud women of inherited properties, mentioned the 7 known victims and the possibility of more. Ethan was named as a co-conspirator. Cassidy Monroe was mentioned as a cooperating witness. And buried in the 4th paragraph was my name. The investigation began after Harper Caldwell, Vivian's daughter-in-law, filed a police report alleging her husband Ethan Caldwell had forged documents to gain control of her inherited property.
My phone rang.
It was Rachel. "Have you seen the news?" she asked. "Yes. Your inbox is probably blowing up. Don't respond to any media requests. Don't talk to any journalists. This is federal now, and anything you say could complicate the case. Rachel, everyone is going to know. Everyone is going to be talking about this. Let them talk.
The truth is out there now.
You're not the crazy, vindictive ex-wife. You're the victim who stood up to a predator. That's the narrative now." She was right. Over the next few days, as more details emerged, as other victims came forward publicly, as Cassidy's story about the brake tampering made headlines, public opinion shifted dramatically. The same people who'd been posting supportive messages on Ethan's Facebook page started deleting them. People who'd unfriended me sent apology messages. The hospital CEO released a statement supporting me and condemning Vivian's attempt to interfere with my employment. Ethan's social media went silent. Vivian, through her lawyers, released a statement denying all allegations and claiming she was the victim of a coordinated smear campaign. No one believed her. 2 weeks after the story broke, I finally went home. The restraining order had been modified to allow me back into my house, while prohibiting Ethan from coming within 500 feet of the property. Rachel had arranged for a security company to install cameras and an alarm system. A locksmith had changed all the locks. I stood on the front porch of the Craftsman bungalow, the house Aunt Rosemary had loved, the house I'd fought so hard to keep, and turned the new key in the lock. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it. The books on the shelves, the photos on the mantel, the roses visible through the kitchen window. But it felt different somehow. Like the house had been holding its breath, waiting to see if I'd survive to come home. I walked through each room, touching familiar things, reclaiming my space. In the study, I found Ethan's desk cleared out, his belongings gone. He'd been allowed supervised access to collect his things while I was at work one day. The empty desk felt like a liberation. That night, sleeping in my own bed for the first time in weeks, I had the first peaceful sleep I'd had since finding those documents in Ethan's study. The legal proceedings moved forward with the momentum of a freight train. Ethan was arrested and charged with forgery, filing false instruments, and conspiracy to commit fraud. His bail was set high enough that he had to use his inheritance to post it. Vivian was arrested 3 days later on federal racketeering charges. Her bail was denied due to the ongoing attempted murder investigation and flight risk concerns. She was held in federal detention pending trial. Cassidy Monroe, under witness protection and immunity agreement, began providing detailed testimony to federal prosecutors about every case she'd worked on for Vivian. And one by one, the other victims came forward. Not just the 7 Cassidy had documented, but more. Women who'd been too intimidated to fight, too ashamed to admit they'd been conned, too isolated to know they weren't alone. 12 women total. 12 women who'd been targeted, manipulated, and robbed by Vivian Caldwell's enterprise over 20 years. Rachel organized a meeting for all of us. It happened on a Saturday afternoon at a law office conference room in downtown Portland. I arrived nervous, not knowing what to expect. The room was full of women of all ages, all backgrounds. Patricia Oakes was there, the woman from Seattle who'd lost her father's building. Monica Reyes and Jennifer Wu. And 9 others I'd never met. Rachel introduced me as the woman who'd finally stopped Vivian, and they applauded. Actually applauded. "You did what we couldn't," Patricia said, tears in her eyes. "You fought back." "We all fought back," I said. "We're all here now. We're all speaking up." We spent 3 hours sharing our stories. The details were different, but the pattern was identical. Vivian would identify a woman with valuable property, usually through public records or probate filings. She'd engineer a connection, either through her son, her nephew, a business associate, or a friend. The man would court the woman, marry her, or get engaged. Documents would be manipulated. Pressure would be applied. The property would be transferred or sold, the relationship would end, and Vivian's empire would grow. Some of the women had lost houses. Others had lost commercial buildings, land, investment properties. One woman, a sculptor named Yvette, had lost her warehouse studio and all her artwork when it was sold out from under her by the man she'd thought loved her. Every single one of us had been made to feel crazy, emotional, irrational when we'd questioned what was happening. Every single one of us had been gaslit and manipulated. And every single one of us was ready to testify. By the end of the meeting, we'd formed something like a support group. We exchanged numbers, promised to stay in touch, created a private social media group where we could talk and support each other through the trial process. For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel alone. 3 months after Vivian's arrest, the trial date was set. Federal prosecutors were confident. They had Cassidy's testimony, they had the documentary evidence, they had 12 victims ready to testify about the pattern of predatory behavior. But Vivian's defense team was formidable. Expensive lawyers from Seattle and San Francisco, experts in white-collar crime defense. They were going to fight every charge, challenge every piece of evidence, attack every witness's credibility. The week before the trial was scheduled to begin, Rachel called me with unexpected news. Vivian wants to meet with you. Absolutely not. Hear me out. She's offering a deal. She'll plead guilty to all charges, accept full responsibility, and agree to make financial restitution to all 12 victims if you'll agree to a private meeting. Just the two of you, with lawyers present, but no recording devices. Why would I agree to that? Because if she pleads guilty, you don't have to testify. None of you do. You don't have to be cross-examined by her defense lawyers, don't have to have your life picked apart on the witness stand, don't have to relive the trauma in public court. I thought about it. The idea of sitting across from Vivian, looking her in the eye after everything she'd done, made my skin crawl. But it also felt like something I needed to do. I'll meet with her, I said. But I want Patricia there too. She's been fighting Vivian longer than any of us. She deserves to be in that room. The meeting was arranged for the following Tuesday at the Federal Detention Center, where Vivian was being held. Rachel and Patricia's attorney were present, along with Vivian's lead defense counsel. Vivian was brought in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair pulled back without its usual styling. No makeup, no jewelry. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. But her eyes still had that cold calculation. She sat across from Patricia and me, her hands folded on the table. "Thank you for agreeing to meet," she said, her voice the same smooth tone I remembered from dozens of dinners. "I imagine you both have questions for me." "I don't have questions," Patricia said, her voice hard. "I know exactly who you are and what you did. I just want to hear you say it. I want to hear you admit that you're a thief and a predator who targeted vulnerable women for profit." Vivian was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she nodded. "You're right. That's exactly what I am." She looked at each of us in turn. "I identified women who'd recently inherited valuable properties. I researched them, found their vulnerabilities, their desires. I engineered relationships designed to gain access to those assets. And then I manipulated and coerced them into giving up what was theirs." "Why?" I asked. "You were already rich. You already had a successful business. Why steal from women who'd just lost family members? Why target people in grief?" Vivian smiled that cold smile. "Because I could. Because in this world, Harper, nice women finish last. Sentimental women get taken advantage of. I learned that lesson a long time ago, and I decided I'd rather be the one doing the taking." "So, it was just greed," Patricia said. "You destroyed lives for money you didn't even need. Not just money. Power. Control. The satisfaction of outsmarting people who thought they were smarter than me." Vivian leaned back in her chair. "You both want me to feel remorse, to break down crying and beg forgiveness. That's not going to happen. I regret getting caught. I regret that Cassidy turned on me. But I don't regret the game itself, only that I lost." I stared at her, this woman who'd welcomed me into her home, who'd smiled at my wedding, who'd hugged me and called me daughter, while planning to rob me blind. "You tried to have Cassidy killed," I said. "Was that part of the game too?" For the first time, something flickered in Vivian's expression. That was Marcus acting on his own initiative. Overzealous loyalty. I never gave authorization for violence. But you didn't stop it either, Patricia said. You created the environment where someone thought attempted murder was an acceptable solution to your problems. Vivian had no answer for that. Are you actually going to plead guilty? I asked. Or is this meeting just another manipulation? I'm going to plead guilty, Vivian said. My lawyers have made it clear that with Cassidy's testimony and your evidence, a trial would be a bloodbath. The best outcome for me is accepting a plea deal, serving my time, and maintaining some shred of dignity. How much time? Patricia asked. 15 to 20 years, most likely. I'll be in my 70s when I get out, if I live that long. Vivian looked at me. I want you to know, Harper, that Ethan is pleading guilty too. He's cooperating with prosecutors, testifying against me in exchange for a reduced sentence. He'll probably serve 3 to 5 years. He's betraying you, I said. The way you taught him to betray everyone else. Poetic, isn't it? Vivian's smile was bitter. I raised him to be ruthless, and now that ruthlessness is being used against me. What about the other victims? Patricia asked. The restitution you're offering? Full restitution of the assessed value of the properties at the time they were taken, plus interest. My lawyers are drawing up the agreements now. You'll all be made financially whole, at least in monetary terms. It wasn't enough. Money couldn't give back the years of pain, the damaged relationships, the lost trust. But it was something. I have one question, I said. Did Ethan ever actually love me? Even a little? Vivian was quiet, and for a moment, I thought I saw something almost like sympathy in her eyes. I don't know, she said finally. I don't think Ethan knows. I raised him to see relationships as transactions, love as weakness. If he had the capacity to love you, I destroyed it a long time ago. That, somehow, was the most painful thing she'd said. The meeting ended shortly after. As guards led Vivian away, she paused at the door and looked back. For what it's worth, she said, you were smarter than the others. Braver. You're the one who beat me. That takes a particular kind of strength. Then she was gone. Patricia and I sat in the conference room for a long time after, not speaking. Finally, she reached over and took my hand.
It's over, she said.
After all these years, it's finally over. But it wasn't over. Not quite yet. 6 months after Vivian's guilty plea, I stood in the crowded community room of the Multnomah County Courthouse, surrounded by the 11 other women who'd been victims of her schemes. We were there for the final restitution hearing, where a judge would approve the financial settlements Vivian had agreed to as part of her plea deal. The courtroom was packed. Journalists filled the back rows, their cameras and recorders ready. Victim advocates sat with us, offering quiet support. And in the front row, Vivian's defense team sat with stacks of documents, ready to finalize the transfer of assets that would make us whole, at least financially. Vivian herself wasn't present. She'd already been transferred to federal prison in Dublin, California, where she'd begin serving her 18-year sentence. Ethan wasn't there either. He was in a minimum security facility in Oregon, 3 years into his 5-year sentence, having testified against his mother in exchange for a reduced sentence. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a reputation for being tough on white-collar crime, reviewed the restitution agreements carefully. She called each of us forward one by one to confirm we understood and agreed to the terms. When it was my turn, I approached the bench, and she looked at me over her reading glasses. Ms. Caldwell, I understand you're receiving restitution of $975,000, representing the current market value of your property plus interest and damages. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And you agree to accept this sum in exchange for releasing any further civil claims against Vivian Caldwell or Caldwell Properties. I thought about it for a moment. The house Aunt Rosemary had left me was worth about $800,000 when I'd inherited it. With Portland's real estate appreciation and the accumulated interest, the restitution amount was actually more than I would have gotten if I'd simply sold it myself. But more than that, I thought about what I wanted to do with the money, the plans I'd been forming over the past months. Yes, Your Honor. I agree to the terms. She nodded. Then I approve this restitution agreement. The funds will be transferred to your account within 30 business days. I returned to my seat, and one by one, the other women went through the same process. Patricia was awarded $1.2 million for her father's commercial building. Monica received $600,000 for her cabin. Jennifer got $800,000 for her duplex. By the end of the hearing, Vivian Caldwell's empire had been dismantled and distributed to the women she'd stolen from. Caldwell Properties itself had been dissolved, its assets liquidated to pay the restitution and legal fees. The woman who'd spent 20 years building a criminal enterprise had lost everything. After the hearing, we gathered at a restaurant in the Pearl District, the 12 of us plus Rachel, and a few other attorneys who'd helped with the case. We toasted with champagne, celebrated our victory, shared stories about how we were rebuilding our lives. Patricia had used her settlement to buy a small art gallery in Seattle, fulfilling a lifelong dream. Monica had purchased a new cabin, this time in her name alone, with ironclad legal protections. Jennifer had invested in rental properties, building passive income that would support her family. "What about you, Harper?" Yvette the sculptor asked. "What are you going to do with your settlement?" I've been thinking about this question for months, ever since it became clear we were actually going to win. "I'm starting a foundation," I said. "The Rosemary Sinclair Foundation for Women's Property Rights. We'll provide legal assistance to women who are being defrauded or coerced out of their property, especially in cases involving family members or romantic partners. Free legal representation, resources, education about property rights, and financial protection." The table went quiet. "Harper, that's amazing," Patricia said, her eyes shining with tears. "We could all contribute," Monica added. "Pool some of our settlements to create an endowment. Make sure the foundation has sustainable funding." And that's what we did. By the end of dinner, we'd committed collectively to donate $300,000 to establish the foundation. Combined with my own contribution and some grants Rachel said she could help secure, we'd have enough to actually make a difference. The Rosemary Sinclair Foundation launched 3 months later. We rented a small office in downtown Portland, hired 2 full-time attorneys and a paralegal, and started accepting cases. The response was overwhelming. Within the first month, we received over 50 requests for assistance from women across Oregon and Washington. Women whose partners were trying to steal their inheritances, whose in-laws were manipulating them into signing away property rights, whose family members were exploiting them financially. We couldn't help everyone, but we helped as many as we could. And with each case we won, with each woman we protected from predatory schemes, I felt like I was honoring Aunt Rosemary's legacy in a way that went beyond just keeping her house. Speaking of the house, I did eventually sell it. Not because I had to, and not because anyone pressured me, but because I chose to. After everything that had happened, living in that beautiful Craftsman bungalow felt haunted. Every room held memories of Ethan, of the lies I'd believed, of the violation I'd felt when I learned Cassidy had been going through my things. I loved the house, but I couldn't heal there. I sold it for just over $1 million to a young family with 2 kids who fell in love with the rose garden and the built-in bookshelves. I kept Aunt Rosemary's books, her pottery, her photos, the things that mattered. The rest went with the house. With the proceeds, I bought a small condo in the Alberta Arts District, a neighborhood full of galleries and coffee shops and community gardens. It was modern and bright, with big windows and an open floor plan. It was nothing like the Craftsman bungalow. It was perfect. I stayed at Children's Healthcare for another year, but eventually, the foundation demanded more of my time than I could give while maintaining a full-time therapy practice. I transitioned to part-time, seeing a small caseload of kids I'd been working with for years, not ready to abandon them but knowing my calling had shifted. My life became about helping women protect themselves from predators like Vivian. It became about education and empowerment, about changing laws and social attitudes, about making sure what happened to me and the other 11 women wouldn't happen to countless more. The work was hard and often heartbreaking. I heard stories that made Vivian's schemes look almost tame by comparison. Women who'd been financially abused for decades by controlling partners. Women who'd lost everything to family members who'd forged their signatures on reverse mortgages. Women who discovered their husbands had taken out loans against their inherited property without their knowledge. But there were victories too. Women who called us in time before the fraud was complete and we were able to stop it. Women who'd already lost their property, but were able to recover it through legal action. Women who simply needed someone to believe them, to validate that what was happening wasn't normal, wasn't acceptable, wasn't their fault. One of those women was Emma Rodriguez, a 28-year-old teacher who came to us 18 months after we opened. She'd inherited a small house in Beaverton from her grandmother and was engaged to a man who was pressuring her to add his name to the deed for protection in case something happened to her. She had a bad feeling about it, but couldn't articulate why. All her friends and family said she was being paranoid, that if she really loved her fiancé, she should trust him. Our intake attorney recognized the red flags immediately. We did a background check on the fiancé and discovered he'd been engaged 3 other times, each time to a woman who'd recently inherited property. Each engagement had ended shortly after property transfers occurred. We helped Emma call off the wedding and get a restraining order. We helped her understand that her instincts weren't paranoia but self-preservation. And we helped her report the man to police, leading to an investigation that eventually revealed he'd defrauded 2 of his previous fiancés. Emma sent me a card after the case was resolved. It said simply, "You saved my life. Thank you for believing me when no one else would." That card sits on my desk at the foundation office. On hard days, when I'm tired and overwhelmed, when the stories I hear make me want to give up, I look at that card and remember why this matters. My relationship with my own family healed slowly. My father, who never particularly liked Ethan, said, "I told you there was something off about that boy," approximately 50 times before my mother told him to stop. They were supportive through the trial and the aftermath, even though they didn't fully understand the legal complexities of what had happened. My mother's main concern was whether I was eating enough and whether I'd start dating again. The answer to the first was yes, eventually. The answer to the second was not for a long time. I dated casually here and there, but I wasn't ready for anything serious. The trust Ethan had shattered didn't rebuild overnight. I found myself second-guessing everyone's motives, looking for hidden agendas, protecting my independence fiercely. My therapist, a lovely woman named Dr. Patel, whom I started seeing 6 months after Vivian's arrest, said this was normal. "You've experienced a profound betrayal," she told me. "Your husband, the person who was supposed to protect and cherish you, was actually stealing from you. That's trauma. It takes time to heal from trauma." So I gave myself time. I focused on work, on the foundation, on rebuilding my sense of self outside of any relationship. I reconnected with old friends, made new ones through the foundation work, found community in unexpected places. Olivia remained my closest confidant. She'd stood by me through everything, given me a place to stay, believed me when others doubted, celebrated every victory like it was her own. Our friendship, tested by crisis, had become unbreakable. 2 years after Vivian's sentencing, Olivia and I took a trip to Italy. We spent 2 weeks eating pasta and drinking wine and wandering through museums and not talking about fraud or property law or criminal enterprises. We talked about art and history and the future and all the possibilities that existed in the world. On our last night in Rome, sitting at a sidewalk cafe watching people walk by, Olivia asked me if I was happy. I thought about it. Happy felt like a complicated word. I was content. I was purposeful. I was healing. But happy? I'm getting there, I said. I think happiness isn't a destination. It's more like a direction. And I'm pointed the right way now. She smiled. That's very philosophical for someone who's had 4 glasses of wine. 4 glasses of wine make me philosophical. We laughed, and in that moment, I realized I was happy. Maybe not in the fairy tale way I'd once imagined, not in the way I'd felt on my wedding day, when I'd thought I had everything figured out, but in a deeper, more resilient way. Happy despite everything I'd been through. Happy because of everything I'd survived. 3 years after the restitution hearing, I ran into Cassidy Monroe. I was having coffee at a shop in Northwest Portland when I saw her through the window, walking down the street with a small dog on a leash. She looked different, older somehow, her hair cut shorter, dressed in casual clothes instead of the designer suits I remembered. For a moment, I thought about pretending I hadn't seen her. What would we even say to each other? She'd helped orchestrate the fraud that nearly destroyed my life. But she'd also brought down Vivian, risking her own life to cooperate with prosecutors. Before I could decide, she saw me. Our eyes met through the window. She froze. I gestured to the empty chair at my table. After a long moment, she came inside. "Harper," she said quietly, "I didn't expect to see you. I live in the neighborhood. You? I'm just visiting a friend. I moved to Eugene after everything happened. Couldn't stay in Portland." She sat down, the small dog settling at her feet. We were both silent for a moment. "I'm sorry," she finally said. "I know that's not enough. I know sorry doesn't fix what I did, but I need to say it anyway. I'm sorry for everything." I studied her face, looking for manipulation, for the calculating attorney who drafted fraudulent documents and invaded my home. I didn't see her. I saw a tired woman who'd made terrible choices and was living with the consequences. "Are you still practicing law?" I asked. She laughed bitterly.
No.
I was disbarred. I work at a nonprofit now, doing administrative work. It's not what I trained for, but it's honest work, and that matters more than I used to think it did. "What made you do it?" I asked. "Why did you help Vivian?" Cassidy was quiet for a long time. "Money, at first. She paid me well for the legal work, and I told myself it was just business, just helping clients navigate property transfers. But there was also this sick satisfaction in being smarter than everyone else, in pulling off something complicated and getting away with it." She looked at me. And there was Vivian herself. She had this way of making you feel special, chosen, part of something bigger. I was in love with Ethan once, but when we broke up, Vivian kept me close. Made me feel valued in a way my own family never had. It's not an excuse. It's just the truth. Do you think Vivian actually ordered the hit on you? Or was it really just Marcus acting alone? I don't know. I've thought about it a lot. Vivian was capable of anything when it came to protecting her empire, but I also think she was smart enough to know that killing me would only make things worse. Marcus, though, he worshipped her. He might have thought he was doing what she wanted without her having to say it explicitly. Did they ever charge him?
Yes.
He's serving 25 to life for attempted murder. The evidence was solid. My brake lines had been cut professionally, and they found tools in his garage that matched the marks. He had motive, opportunity, and no alibi. We sat in silence again. "I heard about your foundation," Cassidy said. "The Rosemary Sinclair Foundation. That's good work you're doing." "It is. If you ever need legal research or document review, or anything I can do without a law license, I'd volunteer. No pay, no strings. Just a chance to maybe balance the scales a little bit." I considered it. Part of me wanted to say no, to keep this woman who'd hurt me out of my life entirely. But another part, the part that had learned about redemption and second chances, and the complexity of human nature, considered the possibility. "Send me your contact information," I said. "I can't promise anything, but I'll think about it." She nodded, pulled out her phone, and we exchanged numbers. Then she stood, gathering her dog's leash. "Thank you for not hating me," she said. "I didn't say I don't hate you. I said I'll think about it." But I said it with a slight smile. She smiled back, sadly, and left. I never did call her for volunteer work. Some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt. But I also didn't delete her number. It stayed in my phone, a reminder that people are complicated, that motivations are complex, that nothing is ever as simple as good versus evil. For years after Vivian's arrest, Patricia called me with news that the woman who'd started this whole journey by being the first victim willing to speak up had passed away. It was cancer, Patricia's daughter told me on the phone. She'd been fighting it for 2 years. But she wanted you to know that taking down Vivian was one of the best things she ever did. She said it gave her peace to know that woman couldn't hurt anyone else. I attended Patricia's memorial in Seattle. All 11 of the other victims were there, plus Rachel and several of the attorneys who'd worked on the case. We shared stories about Patricia's strength, her refusal to give up even when Vivian's lawyers had buried her emotions, her determination to see justice done. At the reception afterward, Monica pulled me aside. "Patricia left something for the foundation," she said, handing me an envelope. She updated her will after the restitution. "This is for you." Inside was a check for $500,000 and a note in Patricia's handwriting. "Harper, use this to keep fighting. Every woman you save from predators like Vivian is a victory for all of us. You turned our tragedy into purpose. That's the greatest revenge. Love, Patricia." I cried reading it. This woman, who'd lost so much to Vivian's greed, who'd spent years fighting a legal battle she couldn't win, had given the last gift she could give. The gift of continuing the fight. The foundation used Patricia's donation to expand. We hired 2 more attorneys, opened a satellite office in Eugene, and launched a statewide education program about property rights and financial abuse. We partnered with domestic violence organizations, recognizing that economic abuse and property theft often went hand in hand with other forms of abuse. We helped hundreds of women. Some cases were simple consultations, explaining their rights and giving them the information they needed to protect themselves. Others were complex litigation that dragged on for months or years. But every single woman who walked through our doors left knowing she wasn't alone, wasn't crazy, wasn't being paranoid. She was being smart. She was being careful. She was protecting herself and her future. 5 years after Vivian's sentencing, I was invited to speak at a conference on financial abuse. The audience was full of lawyers, victim advocates, social workers, and law enforcement officers, all working to combat economic exploitation. I told my story. Not all of it. The details were still painful and private, but the outline. The inheritance, the courtship, the marriage, the discovery of fraud, the decision to fight back. The investigation, the trial, the restitution, the foundation. When I finished, the room erupted in applause. During the Q&A session, a young woman in the back raised her hand. "How did you find the courage to fight?" she asked. "When everyone was telling you that you were wrong, that you should trust your husband, that you were being irrational. How did you keep going?" I thought about that question for a moment. I almost didn't, I said honestly. There were so many times I wanted to give up. When I lost friends, when people thought I was crazy, when Vivian's lawyers filed their slap suit, when it seemed like the system was designed to protect people like her instead of people like me. I almost gave up at least a dozen times. What stopped you? A few things. I had a good lawyer who believed me. I had a best friend who stood by me. I had evidence that proved I wasn't imagining things. But more than that, I had this realization that if I didn't fight, Vivian would just do this to someone else. And the next woman might not have the resources I had, might not have the documentation, might not have the support system. So I fought not just for me, but for all the women who came before me and all the women who would come after. Another hand went up. Do you regret marrying Ethan? Knowing what you know now, do you wish you'd never met him? It was a question I'd asked myself many times. It's complicated, I said. I regret being deceived. I regret the pain and the betrayal. I regret that I trusted someone who was lying to me from the beginning. But if I'd never married Ethan, I wouldn't have discovered Vivian's schemes. I wouldn't have stopped her. I wouldn't have met the other 11 women who became my friends and allies. I wouldn't have started the foundation. So maybe it's possible for something good to come from something terrible. Maybe that's how we heal from trauma, by transforming it into purpose. After the conference, several women approached me privately. They shared their own stories of financial abuse, of property theft, of being gaslit and manipulated by people they loved. Some of them asked for help from the foundation. Others just needed to be heard, to have someone acknowledge that what had happened to them was real and wrong. I gave each of them my card. I listened to their stories. And I reminded them of what I'd learned through my own experience. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You deserve to be protected. And there are people who will fight for you. 6 years after Vivian's arrest, I met someone. His name was David Chun, and he was a professor of social work at Portland State University. We met at a fundraiser for the foundation, where he was presenting research on economic abuse in intimate partner relationships. We started talking about his research and ended up closing down the venue, still deep in conversation about trauma-informed advocacy and systemic barriers to justice. He asked for my number. I gave it to him, but I was honest about my history and my hesitation. I was in a marriage where I was deceived and defrauded. I told him. It's made me cautious about trusting people, especially in romantic contexts. That's completely understandable, he said. And I respect that. How about this? We go slow. Coffee, not dinner. Public places. You control the pace. No pressure. No expectations. We did go slow. Very slow. We had coffee. Then we had lunch. Then we took a walk through the Japanese garden. Then we went to a lecture on financial literacy. It took 6 months before we had what could actually be called a date, dinner at a nice restaurant followed by a concert. It took another 6 months before I invited him to my condo. David was patient in a way I'd never experienced before. He didn't push, didn't pressure, didn't try to accelerate things. He let me set the pace, respected my boundaries, and never made me feel like my caution was unreasonable or paranoid. Slowly, carefully, I learned to trust again. Not blindly, the way I'd trusted Ethan, but consciously, actively, choosing to believe that not everyone was Vivian, that not every relationship was a trap, that vulnerability didn't have to mean exploitation. David met my family. He met Olivia, who interrogated him thoroughly before declaring him acceptable, barely. He met the foundation staff and the other survivors, all of whom had strong opinions about any man I might date. He passed all their tests with grace and good humor. 2 years into our relationship, on a quiet Sunday morning in my condo, David asked if I'd ever consider getting married again. I don't know, I said honestly. The institution of marriage is complicated for me now. It's tied up with all this legal and financial vulnerability that I spent years fighting to protect myself from. What if we approached it differently, he suggested. What if we had an ironclad prenuptial agreement drafted by the best family law attorney in Portland? What if we kept our finances separate, our properties in our individual names? What if we built a marriage based on genuine partnership instead of legal entanglement? I thought about it. The old Harper, the one who'd married Ethan believing in fairy tales, would have been insulted by the suggestion of a prenup. She would have seen it as unromantic, as a lack of trust. The new Harper, the one who'd survived Vivian's schemes and built a foundation to protect other women, saw the wisdom in it. I think that could work, I said. We got married on a beach in Oregon, small ceremony with just close friends and family. Olivia was my maid of honor. David's brother was his best man. My father walked me down the sandy aisle with tears in his eyes. The prenuptial agreement was comprehensive and fair, drafted by Rachel herself. Our assets remained separate. Our inheritances remained our own. If the marriage ended, we'd each leave with what we'd brought in. It wasn't romantic in the traditional sense.
But it was honest.
And after everything I'd been through, honesty mattered more than romance. 8 years after Vivian's arrest, I received a letter from her. She was allowed limited correspondence from prison, and she'd used one of her allotted letters to write to me. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside was a single page, written in Vivian's elegant handwriting. Harper, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I've had a lot of time to think about my choices, about the lives I destroyed, about the woman I became. You asked me during our meeting if I had any regrets.
Elite.
I do have regrets. I regret teaching my son to see love as weakness. I regret that my greed cost him his freedom and his future. I regret that I became exactly the kind of predator I once swore I'd never let myself be vulnerable to. I was targeted once, a long time ago, by a man who used me and discarded me. I vowed I'd never be the victim again. So, I became the victimizer. That doesn't excuse what I did. It just explains it. You beat me, Harper. Not because you were smarter or richer or more powerful, but because you had something I'd lost a long time ago. The courage to be vulnerable, to ask for help, to trust that justice might actually exist. I hope your foundation thrives. I hope you save every woman I failed to destroy and all the ones I never got the chance to target. Consider this letter my final act of surrender. Vivian. I read it 3 times, looking for manipulation, for a hidden agenda, for some angle I wasn't seeing. But I didn't find one. It seemed genuine as someone like Vivian could be. I wrote back. Just a short note. Vivian. I received your letter. I appreciate the honesty. I won't say I forgive you. That's not mine to give. But I will say that I understand how trauma can twist us into people we never meant to become. I hope you find some peace in the years you have left. The foundation you mentioned is thriving. Last year, we helped 312 women protect their property and their futures. This year, we're on track to help even more. You're right that I beat you. But not because of courage or vulnerability. I beat you because I had help. Because other women came forward. Because attorneys and advocates and detectives and prosecutors all worked together to stop you. That's the lesson I learned from this. We're stronger together than any predator can be alone. Harper. I never heard from her again. She died in prison 4 years later. Heart attack. She was 68. I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent flowers, signed simply from the Rosemary Sinclair Foundation. 10 years after the restitution hearing, the foundation held its anniversary celebration. We rented a ballroom and invited everyone who'd been part of the journey, the survivors, the attorneys, the advocates, the staff, the donors. Monica was there, along with Jennifer, Yvette, and the other survivors. Patricia's daughter attended, representing her mother's legacy. Cassidy sent a donation with a note saying she was grateful for the work we were doing, though she understood why she wasn't invited. Rachel gave a toast. 10 years ago, 12 women walked into a courtroom and faced down a predator who thought she was untouchable. Today, those 12 women have helped build something that's protected over 2,000 women from similar predators. That's not just justice. That's transformation. We celebrated late into the night, sharing stories and memories and dreams for the future. David, my husband of 3 years, pulled me onto the dance floor. As we swayed to the music, he asked, "Are you happy?" I thought about everything I'd survived, everything I'd lost, everything I'd built. "Yes," I said, "I really am." And I meant it. The Rosemary Sinclair Foundation still operates today. We've expanded to 6 states, helped over 5,000 women, and changed property laws in 3 states to better protect inheritance rights. My work there continues, though I've stepped back from day-to-day operations to focus on advocacy and education. I speak at conferences, train attorneys and law enforcement, and work with legislators to close legal loopholes that predators exploit. Ethan was released from prison after serving 3 years of his 5-year sentence. He moved to California, changed his name, and as far as I know, works in real estate sales. We have no contact, and I'm fine with that. He's part of my past, not my future. The house where Aunt Rosemary taught me to love roses was sold to a family who promised to care for her garden. Sometimes I drive by and see the roses blooming, and I smile. The house is gone from my life, but the love that filled it remains. I've learned that strength isn't about never being hurt. It's about what you do with the hurt after it happens. It's about choosing to transform pain into purpose, trauma into advocacy, betrayal into a commitment to protect others. I've learned that justice isn't always swift or neat or satisfying in the way movies make it seem. But it exists if you're willing to fight for it, if you're willing to be patient and persistent and brave, even when everything tells you to give up. Most importantly, I've learned that we're never as alone as we think we are. There are always others who've survived similar betrayals, who understand the particular pain of being hurt by someone you loved, who can stand beside you in the fight for what's right. To anyone reading this who's facing a similar situation, who's discovering that someone they trusted is stealing from them, who's being told they're paranoid or irrational for protecting themselves, I want you to know, you're not crazy. Your instincts are right. And there are people who will help you fight. Document everything. Trust your gut. Find a good lawyer. Ask for help. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you deserve to be stolen from just because you chose to love someone. Your inheritance, whether it's property or money or family heirlooms, represents more than just financial value. It represents your family's legacy, their love for you, their desire to protect your future. You have every right to defend it. And if you need help, if you're in Oregon or Washington or any of the states where we operate, the Rosemary Sinclair Foundation is here. We believe you. We'll fight for you. We'll stand beside you until justice is done. Because that's what we do. We protect women from predators. We honor the legacies of those who came before us. And we build a future where women's property rights are respected and defended. That's my Aunt Rosemary's legacy. And it's mine too. I still live in Portland, in my bright condo in the Alberta Arts District. David and I recently bought a small cottage on the Oregon coast where we spend weekends, walking on the beach, reading, and enjoying the quiet. I'm 42 now, the same age I was when my marriage to Ethan imploded, but I feel younger somehow, lighter.
Free.
Last spring, I planted roses in the cottage garden. Not the same varieties Aunt Rosemary grew, but similar ones. When they bloomed for the first time, I sat on the porch and thought about her, about everything she gave me, about how her gift of a house became the catalyst for something so much bigger than either of us could have imagined. I like to think she'd be proud, not just of the foundation or the women we've helped, but of who I became through the process of fighting back.
Strong.
Purposeful, unafraid. That's the woman I am now. That's the woman I'll always be. And that's enough. If you've enjoyed the story and want to hear more like it, I'd love it if you could hit that like button and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss future stories. And if you or someone you know is experiencing financial abuse or property fraud, please reach out for help. You don't have to face it alone. Thank you for listening, and remember, your inheritance is yours to protect. Never let anyone take that away from you.